But before we get back into the discussion, Shannon, I know you have a stock up, stock down report that usually comes out sometime in the middle of the week. What do you have going on?
Yeah, it's a Tuesday article, and because I like to try to collect my thoughts before, and we have all the instant articles on Monday, and then uh, there's a few things in the article that I think a lot of people are overlooking the fact T.J. Watt made the defensive player of the game when he made that interception to start the second half. It showed elite instincts at football IQ, and part of what makes Watt the best defender walking the planet. However, if you watch the whole game, he was not the same. He wasn't explosive as usual. He did not get any pressures. He did not really get any pressure on the quarterback. No sacks, no tackles for losses, which was very un-Watt like. But we got to remember that on Thursday, he popped up on the injury report with a heel injury. Now, anybody here in the audience that's ever had plantar fasciitis, it can come up out of nowhere, and when it happens, you hurting. And it will. You can take an injection, and you can go out and function, but you're not the same. And if you watched, Watt did not have the same explosive first step off the line and that ability to get and dip under and come up when he did get around the tackle. And I believe that he's hurting, and I believe it's plantar fasciitis. And if it is, he could benefit from some rest during practice and maybe cut back on his snaps in the game and try to let this heal as much as possible because it can linger all year.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, when Herbie got his first career sack, Nick Herbie come flying around the corner. I thought it was Watt when it first happened because Watt was flipping sides.
Yeah.
And he usually doesn't do that. But he flipped sides in the game a couple of times. And Herbie got that sack, and I said, that was Watt. Because Herbie come around there so quick, he did look like TJ. So I think we have to realize that Watt is not 100% right now. And the Steelers need to be very prudent with his usage at practice and in the games for the next few weeks to try to help that heal as much as possible.
Yeah, they got the Jaguars this week, and then it's a short week against Tennessee. And then there's that mini bye. And so he can kind of hold off into that mini bye and get some real much needed rest. And at the same time, manage his snaps like you were mentioning. That way he doesn't cause any damage and or, make this something that, like you mentioned, long term. But yeah, you're right. Now that you mention it, he really didn't have, that game. In fact, it kind of reminded me a little bit because I've watched the game like 3 times now. And it reminded me kind of the Houston Texans game where receivers were pushing Watt. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like there was several plays. In fact, there was one long run where they went straight at TJ and they used one of the receivers to block him one-on-one. Yeah.
Yeah, he blocked him one-on-one.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And so it's like, I don't know, man. Like you're right. Now that you mentioned the injury, I think that does make a difference. I mean, if it's his foot or his heel, then that also could account to why he was switching sides.
Exactly. Less pressure on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes sense. You brought up Nick Herbig. I thought he had a pretty awesome game. That sack was huge in that moment as well. The defense started off a little bit, questionable, especially in the running game. I think that's still a huge concern. This defensive running team, I mean, against guys, these weren't the Rams' first and second string running backs. These were guys that were off the back depth of the depth chart there.
Henderson come off the couch.
Exactly. And, most running backs off the couch don't usually look like that. It usually takes them a few weeks to get acclimated to the speed of the game and things of that nature. So, I'm still a little bit concerned. I think Martavius Adams played a lot more in this game than Keanu Benton did. I thought he did apply some pressure and he looked good out there when he was. But this running defense, It's a question mark. Do you think that there's going to be an answer for it until Cam comes back?
They're still playing Adams. I mean, I don't know how many. I don't even like talking about a lot of this stuff anymore because I thought for sure that the coaches are going to realize that they're going to make these adjustments, and Benton would be more of a starter. We'd see some Fahuku, which I didn't expect to see Fahuku this week because the Rams, they were worried about the Rams' passing attack, not the running game. But the Rams' offensive line is more of a power line, and it's gap blocking. It's not zone. And they just come off the ball, and they were getting a lot of push. And Adams and Benton, when Benton was in there, were struggling to hold up against the Rams line. They were getting shoved 3 yards back almost every time. And Henderson was just, all he had to do was, hit the assigned hole, and he was getting 4 or 5 yards. And that's concerning. I think that the inside linebackers, we've seen them start to use Roberts a little more in the second half and tried to help slow that down a little bit, especially on early downs. But, their run defense, getting Cam Hayward back is going to be huge. But I think that they can still adjust their usage some. And in the second half, you've seen a lot more Benton, Armand Watts than you did Adams. So similar with Wallace, which we'll get to a little later, I think Tomlin's stubborn. And Tomlin's only going to do things that he wants to do, and he can care less what anybody thinks, especially the fans. But eventually stubbornness gives way to, okay, they've been right all season. And I think we're going to see that moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a little bit frustrating when you see players like Keanu Benton who have been successful when they're out there, have made a difference, and then they're getting pulled back. It is extremely frustrating. And with Keanu Benton, what makes it more frustrating is that there's a clear need for him to be there. Offenses are running straight through the middle of the defense, and when he's in there, that's not happening as often. So, yeah, I don't get it. I'm hoping that they turn that around sooner than later.